Hi everyone, we're live. Let's wait a few seconds for people who are still joining us. Hi people from YouTube and also people from LinkedIn. Thanks for attending our webinar. Please share your expectations in the chat below. It's curious if we'll match them with our today's topic. We have a lot of things to discuss today. Our speaker's presentation is quite generous and full. I'm pretty sure you'll be covered with all your questions regarding to SEO audit. So let's start from a few welcome words. I'm Polina Vlasenko, the social media marketing manager at Serpstat, and I'm here to guide you through this insightful session. A few words about us, about Serpstat. It's a go-to platform to speed up the achievement of search marketing goals. We aim to reduce your time on repetitive tasks and automate manual work to drive customers from search. Serpstat includes more than 50 tools, and you can try all of them for free with 7-day free trial. The flexible settings allow you to adapt the platform to specific tasks. Work in a team or solo, create personal white label reports, and optimize website with a step-by-step checklist. An API will help you work with big data sets. Be the first to discover our recent update. Serpstat's text editor tool has transformed, offering essential formatting options, image insertion, and the power of AI-generated articles, of course. Imagine the possibilities for social media, webinars, videos, and beyond. This tool is in beta, and we want your input. Test it out, explore its potential, and share your feedback with our support team. Help us to prioritize the feature you need most. Follow the link in the chat to dive into the feature of content creation with Serpstat. Sharing it with you now. We host webinars with marketing experts, write blog, and develop a knowledge base that's free to access. It is possible to improve skills by working with personal manager, getting online support, and joining social networking groups. For upcoming events, follow us on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube if you're here first. And briefly about our format. After the main presentation, we will have a Q&A session. So any question is welcome. So please text them anytime in the chat, and I hope and we'll try to cover them all at the end. And now I'm happy to welcome our speaker, Nikki Halliwell, a freelance technical SEO consultant and technical SEO lead at Journey Further. Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Hi, Polina. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm very excited about your webinar presentation.
Yeah, me too. Like you said earlier, there's a lot to get through today, so it should be good.
Great. And let's start.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar. Today, we'll be talking through how we can get maximum results from a tech SEO audit. This is a little bit about me. So I've got 10 years of experience in the industry, and I work across websites of all sizes and all industries. So when people talk about audits, this is what I see people say a lot. You know, they're sick of putting their heart and soul into this piece of work that they're really proud of. They present it to the client. They say that they like it, but then nothing happens afterwards. And it's like, what did I spend all those hours for? It feels like a waste of time. That's absolutely not the case. And that is exactly what we're going to be covering today. How we can then turn those audits that you've done and make sure that we're getting tangible results on the back of them. And how we're going to do that is by looking at this agenda that we have for the webinar today. So we'll be looking at how important technical SEO is and a little bit about how Google works, what the challenges are, the key components of an audit, a process that you can follow for conducting your audit, some common roadblocks that you might come across, how you can make it actionable, and then get them implemented in a collaborative way, working with developers and stakeholders, and finally monitoring and measuring results. So diving right in, our goal when we do an audit and what we're going to learn today is how we can turn our amazing tech SEO audits into actionable strategies that produce tangible results. But there's challenges, right? As we've discussed, there's always some reason why we're not able to get these implemented in the way that we think. And in the common landscape, especially with AI and lots of tools out there, there's the argument that anyone can perform a tech audit, any machine even can perform an audit. Like I say, tools can even do it automatically. There's plenty to choose from. But the difference that we have, and the one fundamental tool that we have at our disposal, is our ability to be human. And this is because we go beyond a standard checklist. We're not just following any rules that have been provided to us by a colleague, by a team member, or even a checklist that we've developed ourselves. What we do as humans is we go down little rabbit holes. So instead of just saying yes, no to all of these issues, we find something that perhaps isn't right, and then we work out why it isn't right, and that allows us to come up with the recommendations on the back of it. But what we also do is we consider the commercial priorities that the business might have, and that's something that a tool can never do. We're human in the recommendations and analysis that we're doing, and we understand these issues. So we need to make sure that our audits capture attention, right? So once we've done the main audit itself, we lay them out into a roadmap. We need to understand that plans and priorities change. So what we first set out in this roadmap might not always be the case for, if we laid it out to 12 months, you might have an algorithm update, such as the one that was announced. What time is it? It's probably about half an hour ago now. Google have announced a March core algorithm update. So that could mean that your audit roadmaps need to change. They need to adapt to the changing landscape. We need to be on our toes and monitoring our client sites to see if something else comes up that might affect this roadmap that we've laid out. And we also need to speak the language of developers and the stakeholders that we have within our client's business. So some common tech challenges that we might face in these audits is that there's too much jargon and too much information. So that will say you need to minify your CSS. What does that mean? To a marketing manager who is quite new to SEO, they're not going to know what that means. But if you explain it in a way that makes sense, that's going to help you to get that buy-in and to get those fixes implemented. We'll come on to ways that we can do that later on in the webinar. Another challenge is that there's no prioritization and no strategy. You just present the client with a list of issues that nobody knows what to do with. Some other issues can be that only the low impact items are actioned. Perhaps that's because they're quicker to do. These could often be the quick fixes. So people just do those because they're easy to do. But then they wonder why they're not seeing this big spike in performance or any spike in performance that they were expecting. Well, that's why, because they're not fixing the big issues. There's no accountability. Nobody knows what they need to work on and what they need to fix. Or perhaps they don't have the resources for the fixes. They might not have a developer who can help them. They might not have, if we find that the issue is backlinks, well, they might not have access to a PR team who can do that. Or perhaps there's not enough detail in the audit. So you'll say, you've got too many big images on your website, but then you don't tell them where the big images are. You can say that all the content on your site is too thin, but then you don't tell them which pages you're talking about. And this causes a lot of back and forth where they're saying, can you send me this? And then you're sending it them. And then there's lots of other questions that go around it. Whereas if you provide all of this up front and take all of these challenges into consideration when you're creating your audit, you'll see things that become much more successful for you. So a little bit on technical SEO and why it's important. And that's because tech SEO is all about optimizing website structure and the various technical aspects of a website. And there's a lot that goes into that. And all of this is what we need to address in an audit. We can't just look at one thing. We can't just look at site speed. We can't just look at user experience or local SEO. We need to look at all of these things, as well as URL structure and everything else. And we also need to understand how Google works, because that ties in to the recommendations that we make. And the reason why I say we think in that is because Google tells us about these processes that they do with the way that they crawl websites and index them and how that feeds into the overall ranking system. But they only tell us so much, right? So they're not going to tell us the complete ins and outs of how they work. And that's fine. I get that. I wouldn't want to do the same if it was my business either. But that makes it slightly harder for us to do our jobs. But this is the best understanding that as an industry, we tend to understand. So Google crawls the website. They follow links. And this is why people talk about the importance of links all the time, whether it's external links or internal links. If there isn't a link of some sort to a page, Google can't find it, therefore it can't crawl it. So they follow these links, and as part of that, they do what's known as the first wave of indexing. So they start to add all these pages to their database. So this is a big list of all of the pages that they have found. Now, if it's a JavaScript website, they then have to go through this extra step, which is what we see in that yellow-green box there that says render. This is known as the second wave of indexing, and this is because they have to go through this extra step to be able to render the JavaScript to see the elements that are on that page. And after that rendering has been completed, then we're back at the indexing stage. We have all of the pages within our database, within Google's database. Now from there, when a customer enters a search term in Google looks at its index, looks at how it's categorized them, works out which pages it thinks are the best match and which are the strongest. So are they the most authoritative? Do they have the best user experience? And all of these other factors that go into determining the best, as it were. And this is where we come into ranking. So that's a very quick overview. I mean, we could spend a whole webinar just talking about this process in itself. And if you've got any more questions about it, we can definitely talk about it after on. But that's a quick run through of how Google tends to index content it finds on the web. But then we also have to consider mobile. This has been around for quite a few years now. But previously, we could just focus on the desktop version of our sites. I'm using a desktop now. I'm sure a good amount of you out there are also using desktops. And as SEOs, we tend to think, and we were very guilty of thinking that not that many people use the mobile website. It's not going to make that much of a difference. Well, the landscape now is very different, and search listings are based on the mobile version of a site. We cannot forget about how content looks and behaves on the mobile site. And hopefully you don't forget about that either. So we need to think about this desktop. We need to think about the mobile experience to ensure that it is the same, so that we're not experiencing any ranking fluctuations. To do that, there's a few quick things that we can do, and I'm just going to mention these very quickly. But that's making sure that the content on your mobile website is the same as it is on your desktop website. It needs to be responsive. You cannot have a separate website. Back in the day, we used to have mobile subdomains, so it might be m.serpstat.com or something similar, and it would be a completely different site. Now we can't have that. We have the same one website with the same content across both, But the size of the screens changes as we move to devices, therefore the way that content looks on the page changes and adapts or is resized to match that. And we need to make sure that we're letting Google crawl our resources. We're not accidentally blocking anything that we shouldn't. So, technical optimizations that we could do now that we understand that a little bit. So, there's lots of technical elements that we need to optimize. And this is an example of just one of them. The image that you can see is the robots.txt file. And we need to look at these technical elements so that we can improve this user experience, which therefore improves the overall performance of a site. And we can implement fixes to make this process a lot easier. And some of these fixes can include robots.txt execution and making sure that we're disallowing access to certain areas of the site. This can be like cart pages and customer accounts and various other backend systems that we don't want Google to crawl because it's a waste of resources. We don't want them to rank. But importantly, they can also contain confidential customer information. And if that appears in search results, you can find yourself getting in quite a bit of trouble. XML sitemap. Do we have an accessible sitemap that sits on the root of the website that contains all of the pages that we want to rank in organic search results? Internal linking. So we talked earlier about how important links are. You'll be surprised how often we find opportunities here at Journey Further where clients haven't properly utilized an internal linking strategy. And it's a really, really powerful tool. And when you get it right, it can make a huge, huge difference. So that's something that we do spend quite a bit of time on, and just making sure that it's as easy as possible for users and search engines to navigate through the website and find the information that they're looking for. Schema visibility. Do we have the necessary schema on our websites that help us to show up in rich results? You know, regardless of what industry it is, you can certainly make use of the relevant schema markup. And site speed optimization. Are we as fast as we can possibly be? Are there opportunities to do that? How does our site speed compare to that of our competitors? So now that we know all of that, we've got a basic overview of what the roadblocks are, how Google works, and why we need some of these optimizations. We can then look at what the key components of a technical SEO audit might be. And the first one is authority. There are a lot of things that go into the authority, and this refers to the overall strength of a domain. So we're looking at how the URL structure is set up. Is it sensible? Is it scalable? Is it flat? Or is it hierarchical? All these things have an impact. Is the content siloed? How is it set up? Do we have small areas of content silos that are about a specific topic? Or is it lots of random pages that don't seem to have any relation to each other? Is the pagination set up in a way that's useful? Can we navigate through the pieces of content that we have? And of course, the all-important backlinks. Are the backlinks that we have relevant? Are they from the same niche? Or are they all poor quality links from spammy looking websites that bear no resemblance to who we are and what we do? Or is there a gap? You know, when we look at a link gap analysis, do we actually have a good amount of links from relevant sites? But when we look at that compared to others, we don't have as many in a certain area. So that's some things that we can then start to target. But you can look at that in an audit, and that's a really powerful way that you can start to build that authority. Content also needs to become part of a tech SEO audit. You can do separate content audits, but I like to include them in mine as well. And then we work together with the wider content team as they're working their magic and doing their various checks as well. And the findings that they come up with also tie in to what I find within this content audit as well. So it's a very much a collaborative approach. But when we're looking at content, we're looking at any content duplication. What is the experience on the website like? Is it sensible and easy for users to navigate? What about the metadata? Are page titles, headings, and meta descriptions, are they all sensible and reflective of the content on the page? Do they contain the target keywords that we want to go after? And also the keywords themselves. what opportunities do we have within them? Do we have a lot of keywords that are on pages 21 to 50? Positions 21 to 50, so they're not really doing as well as they could. And other opportunities that we can look at within the on-page content to improve the position of those keywords. And we can also look at the EEAT to improve the expertise, authority, and trust and experience, of course, within our client sites. Another area to include in our audits is crawling. So in this, we're looking at how search engines discover this content that we've just looked at. So do we have an XML sitemap? Do we have 301 redirects set up? Are there any 302 redirects, and do they make sense, or do they need to become 301s? Internal links, again, there's a lot of reasons why we need to have those, as we've touched on. The robots.txt and how that's set up, is that blocking any areas of a website that it shouldn't? And also robots meta tags. These are different. So robots.txt is disallowing certain areas of the site, whereas robots meta tags work on a page level, so you might no index a particular page. There's a lot to cover in what those two are and how they differ. So that's perhaps again for another webinar, but take the time to understand what the difference is between those. Core budget is another area that you need to pay a fair amount of attention to and make sure that we're getting attention from search engines in the right areas, and also various elements that make up the technical infrastructure. Indexing, we're looking at things like status codes, how many 404s, do we have any server errors, or is everything a nice, good 200 status on our website? We need to look at the canonicals. Are there any pages that are being canonicalized to others, meaning they're not indexable, or we're sending conflicting signals to search engines? Structured data, we talked about earlier when we're looking at schema. And also accessibility. How easy is it for people to look at the site? Do you have harshly contrasting colors that make it difficult for people to actually see the content on the page? And the other area is internationalization. If you're a large international website, you might end up with the same content on different pages, but just in different languages, right? So we need to make sure that we've set up our internationalization correctly and in a way that tells search engines, yes, these two pieces of content are the same, but this is my English version and this is my Spanish version. They're supposed to be the same, but they're targeting different languages, so please don't penalize either one of them. Local SEO, we're looking at things like Google Business Profile, the number of local citations, and also how we've set up any localized content. Our good old friend site speed, there's a lot of things that could go into here, but I've just listed the top 4. So we're looking at the load time. We're looking at the page weight. So the weight refers to like how heavy is it in megabytes. Core Web Vitals, what issues are there within that? And is it a pass or a fail, or is it a few areas that we need to work at? And again, image optimization. It's always an area that I find needs to be worked on. And there's various ways that we can do that. I'm just going to have a quick drink. Okay, so we now know the main areas that make up an audit. So what I'm going to show you now is a bit of a timeline, I guess, or a certain process that you can follow, or that I use to conduct my audits. And this is how you can lay out yours to do the same. These are not all the checks that I conduct, but these are the areas that I look at. And the important thing to note is, while there is no set way to run an audit, yours might look very, very different from mine. That's entirely fine. Using a process helps to guide you in the right direction. And that right direction means finding the issues and the opportunities for your client. It doesn't matter how it doesn't matter how it looks, as long as you get to that end result and it's something that makes sense for you and the client to build upon. So what I do in this first setup phase, I start my crawl. within that way. So I look at the core configuration and make sure I've got all of the necessary elements set up within that it's going to gather the information that I want. I've added my sitemap. I've told my crawler what to do in regards to canonicals and pagination and all that sort of stuff. So then I start my crawl. While it's running, and then looking at the site itself, I'm conducting manual checks. I'm clicking through the site myself and flagging anything that I spot. I'm thinking like a customer. I'm thinking like a user would of this business, thinking of a problem that I might have, and if this website actually answers it in a way that I might expect, so that I'm able to find the information that I'm looking for. I'm also trying to convert. Can I actually get through to that all-important step, or is there something in the way that stops me, or that distracts me in a way? I saw it once where I'd gone through the checkout process and I was about to click the checkout button, and I was doing this on a mobile device, and then the chatbot popped up right in the corner, right above my checkout option. And all I needed to do was press that final button, essentially, to check out, and that would be the point where they would get my money. I had a code, of course, because I was working on the site, so they wouldn't have actually got my money, but you understand what I'm saying, if I was as if I was a customer. So I closed that chatbot and tried to continue, but then the little circle that was still there that was telling me that this chatbot is available, and I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't move it, and I couldn't actually click to complete my transaction. Now, that's something that would not have come up in any of the tools, any of the checks that I would have otherwise performed as part of this process. But you find it by manually clicking through and using the site, and that's just one of the many reasons why you need to do these manual checks. I then look at the data, I look at the analytics, whatever tool we're using, whether it's GA4 or Adobe Analytics or something else, and then also look at Google Search Console. And I'm gathering all of this performance data. And then look at the keywords and benchmark the competition. Hopefully by now, as we've done all this, depending on the size of the website, of course, my site crawl might have finished. So what I can do then is run the crawl analysis. So crawl analysis is done. I've got the information that I need. It's all in a nice report or a nice dashboard, depending on what tool you use. It's, you've got the finished crawl there. Well, then I start to look at the crawlability. So we talked about this earlier when we're talking about the different elements that go into it. And within that, I'm looking at my XML sitemap. Are there any response codes that shouldn't be in my XML sitemap? There should only be indexable pages with a 200 response code. So I'm looking for any that don't meet that criteria, that are non-indexable, or there are even 404s in there because they're sending conflicting signals. Same with orphan pages. Are there pages within my sitemap that aren't linked to anywhere else on the site? Well, that's something that we're going to have to address. I'm also going to look at the site structure and the URL formats and how they're set up. Indexing, so I'm going to look at the response codes and how the links are set up. The faceted navigation, so the main navigation, especially if it's an e-commerce site, we're looking at how we filter products. So if I go to t-shirts and I then go to red, how does that change the URL, and how does that change the way the content appears on the page? And then if I had another and do small red t-shirts, how does that change? And is it any different from me doing red small instead of small red, and things like that? These are all things that you can look at. I'm going to sense check the robots.txt file and see if there's any rules that need to be added or removed. And carrying on with some additional areas of crawlability and indexing, internal linking opportunities, meta robots rules. So these are the no index tags. I'm going to look at the use of canonical URLs and any changes that are needed, the pagination again, and also looking at how the website uses JavaScript and how much of the content relies on JavaScript. Is there anything in there that doesn't render correctly and needs to be updated? Any security issues or vulnerabilities with HTTP URLs. So even if your page is redirect, so if we try to access a HTTP URL instead of HTTPS, you might find that it redirects automatically to the secure version. So you're all good. which you are, but it's also good practice to make sure that you're updating those internal links away from those insecure URLs to point to your new secure versions, so that you're not going to be sending users and search engines through that additional step. They're able to find those final URLs as soon as possible. Cacheability. So with this, we're looking at if lazy loading is used, should it be used? How can we better utilize it? And also, is there any sort of compression that's being used, or other opportunities that we can exploit there to make sure that our content and our resources are compressed so that our pages load as quick as possible? Within the site speed, so we've talked about this already, but when we're looking at this, I'm also looking at things like the time to first byte. So this is how quickly the server responds to the request for a web page. And there's a few tests that we can do within that, but depending on which tool you're using, it should give you a nice time to first byte result within that as well. Page weight, how heavy is it in megabytes? Fully loaded time, so how long does it take for that web page to fully load within the browser? And that's usually a time within seconds. And then we're going to do a multi-test average. So we don't just test the site speed once and take that. You're going to do at least 3 tests and then take that average score from those, and that'll give you a more accurate representation of how your average users are experiencing the site. Site speed, we're looking at where users experience the most frustration in terms of core web vitals. So is it that there's a layout shift? That means content is moving on the page, or is there large resources on the page that are slowing it down? Is there something else in the way that's meaning that the rest of the content can't render as quickly? Mobile responsiveness as well. So this ties into like the mobile first index that we were talking about earlier, and making sure that it's responsive, but also that the buttons are a good enough size on mobile. So on a desktop, we have a nice handy mouse that easily clicks on small buttons. But on mobiles, especially if we're out and about, it can be hard for us to click on those small buttons, especially as we're walking down the street and we're trying to get it with our big old thumbs. No, we need to make sure that the buttons are actually a good size so that our customers can get to the content that they want to get to. Content, so I mentioned a lot of this earlier, so we're looking at H1s, page titles, meta descriptions, other elements within the content, such as how the keywords are used. Wider content audit for opportunities, so this is part of what I'll do with the wider content team that we have here at Journey Further, and we'll be doing a content gap analysis versus their competitors as well. Authority we've talked about, so we're talking about the number of backlinks that we have to our websites, but I also like to look at the backlink ratio, and I think this is a really useful one because it shows us, okay, so we have this many, we've got 1,000 backlinks. That's great. How many domains is that coming from? Oh, it's only 2 domains. So you've got 500 links from one website and 500 links from another. Well, that's not very good, is it? It's not a good spread of links. You want to have like a really low ratio that shows that, yeah, you've got 1,000 backlinks, but you want to have it from a good amount of domains as well, so that you're getting much more value from your links. Are they relevant? Are they from the right industry, or an industry that's close to what you do? Are they from reputable websites as well? And then coming towards the end of this process, we're looking at the international audience, how that's set up, other opportunities that we need to consider. Are they going to be soon expanding to a new international market? That's great. That's really exciting change for a business. But would their current hreflang setup or their approach to internationalization allow us to scale that easily? Or is there going to be a lot of work that's needed in terms of making adjustments to the URLs to accommodate for that? Local SEO. So, we talked about like Google My Business and things earlier, or Google Business Profiles as it's now known. And then we need to see, is the content on these local pages properly accommodating to their audience, or are there other things that we need to do? Like, perform these local searches yourself, especially if you've got access to a CDN. Try and access that site, a VPN, sorry, not a CDN. Yeah, if you've got access to a VPN, try and use that from a location that your client's audience will be, and then you can see the sort of search results that they would have, and then you can get a better idea of how their competitors are approaching their own local pages, and you can make recommendations on the back of that. And then finally, the last area that I look at within my tech audits is negative practices. So these might be things where there's use of malware on the website. There might be blacklisting, which means there's, they've been marked down, if you like, to put it in basic terms. They've been marked down because they've been doing naughty practices, negative practices by search engines. So, they might have like manual actions against them where Google has caught them out, and things like that. Cloaking, are they trying to be something else, or are they using various other black hat cloaking techniques? Are they using hidden text or doorway pages or any of these? There's lots of negative things that people can do to try and trick search engines. I can tell you now that they don't work because Google knows about them, and it will often have the opposite effect that you're trying to do. So this is why we look for them on our client websites and make sure that they're not there, so then we can remove them and address them. So what we do at Jennifer, then, when we've conducted these audits with the process that I just went you through, we then take all of this together and we build it into a business case. And this is a really useful way that our clients and stakeholders are then able to better understand the work that we've done. So we do this because it's designed to produce real commercial results that they can understand. Because if you just say, oh, you've got, 5 major issues on the site and 17, what's the word? I know I said mediocre issues, like middle issues, high priority issues, you've got 5, medium priority, you've got 17, and the rest is all low. They're like, well, great, but what does that mean? This is why we use this PIE prioritization, which stands for potential importance and ease. And we're able to give that a grading, and then we can work out how this, how each item is more important than the other. And we categorize this. And what I've also done is I've started adding another element onto this, which is time criticality. So, it'll have its PIE score, but then how time critical is it? And that gives us an extra qualifier that we can then take to our clients, and it's proving really useful. And then that builds the business case. So we're then able to forecast and predict what difference implementing these fixes could be in terms of revenue uplift or in terms of conversions. And then, our clients can then take that to their managers and get any additional budget that they may or may not need, or it allows them to take that into a meeting with their developers and say, right, I need this amount of time with you each month because we've got this amount of issues to get through that our SEO team will be working through, and this is the difference it could make. And it allows them to get the resources that they need and that we need to all be able to do our job. So it's a really, really powerful way of approaching it. But it's not as simple as that, right? We all know that it's never as simple as just doing this audit, giving them a PIE score and telling them how much money. There's always going to be some sort of roadblocks that we're going to encounter. And they come in all shapes and sizes, unfortunately, but we need to understand them and know how we can overcome them so that we can, start to see that much needed success and those technical outcomes that we were talking about at the start of the audit. Well, the first one that a lot of people come across is lack of developer buy-in, and that's because developers are busy. They've got requests coming from everyone in the business saying, I want this, I need that, and the CEO going, I need this because I think it's going to look nice. And the other issue is that people are guilty of going to a developer and saying, this is what I need and this is how you're going to do it. But they might not understand, how the website works and the other technology that's involved. So actually, you need to not tell them how to get there, but tell the developer the outcome that you want, and that will then help them to do what they need to do, basically. But we can overcome this lack of developer buy-in by tying the changes that we want and the fixes that we need to make back to these commercial terms and the return on investment. So everything that we've just talked about within that PIE score. Find common ground, listen to the developers. What is it that they're struggling with? What information do they need from us to be able to do their jobs? Frame recommendations within the tech stack, so take into consideration certain elements of the setup. Provide enough detail, no more, no less. If you need them to fix the canonicals, you don't need to write 2 pages on what a canonical is and why they're important. Nobody's going to read that. Just get straight to the point. You can even, when you're having these conversations with developers, say, right, when I'm giving you these issues, what information do you need? And just get them to give you bullet points. I need to know blah, blah, blah. And it's like, right, great. So then if you just give them those 3 things or however many things it is, you're going to get things implemented a lot quicker. And establish regular lines of communication. It might be that you have a call once a month, once a week, whatever. Depends on how many issues there are and the size of the business. Or you have a Slack channel and you keep in touch regularly through that. That's completely fine as long as you have that line of communication that's open between you. Another issue might be that there's just lack of resource. So businesses might have limited budget, so they really struggle to implement your tech requests. We can overcome that by taking a goal-first approach and using quantifiable metrics that rank your fixes and the features that you want based on their strategic value that they can have for the business. You might find that there's a lot of organizational silos that are getting in the way. So this can be things like in large organizations, departments operate in silos. It's, you've got marketing who never talk to finance and all that sort of things. But actually, you need some help from finance because you need this bit of information so that you can update it within your content. But then they're not going to talk to each other. And it's little things like that. So we need a way that we can break down these barriers and really create that better cross-department teamwork. And we can do that by sharing accountabilities and purposes, making sure that you're speaking to the team leaders and the managers of each of those teams and getting them a seat at the table with you, making them part of the conversations that you're having. And you can utilize lots of different tools for doing that. So we talked about Slack, but you can use things like Monday.com. You've got Asana, Jira, Basecamp, all of these other things. The organization might even already have some sort of tool that they're using, but making sure that they're included and you're included in all of those relevant conversations. And then you're able to better align any incentives that you have and make sure everybody's aware of the shared goals. Then we have complexity of implementation. So obviously, as we touched on earlier, some issues are bigger than others. Not all issues are created equal. So naturally, some are a lot easier to implement than others. But we can overcome that in our audits and by defining the goal that we have. So why is it that you need everyone to buy into this issue? It's a big issue, but getting through this would mean that we can achieve X. Break it down in terms of subtasks and any dependencies. So then instead of tackling this one massive task, you've broken it down into 5 smaller ones that are much more digestible and achievable. And they seem a lot less daunting for everybody as well. Estimate the effort that might be needed and required from the wider team as well as from the development teams. And then assign roles and responsibilities for each task so that everybody knows where they're up to and where they need to get involved. Another roadblock is that people can just be resistant to change. So this is the way that things have been done for a while. That's just the way it is. We can't change it now type mentality. You might come across that a lot. I know I certainly have. But one of the ways that we can get through that is just understanding why there's that resistance. There's often a reason why things have only been done a certain way, or is it just that we need to do a bit of extra training maybe just to make sure that they know that there is another way and it's not actually as big and scary as they may think. Address their concerns. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with having these fears about something new, if that is the case. Communicate consistently, be proactive, and just offer support and resources, and just work out what we can do instead, or how we can get around this, and just help them. That's what we're here to do. Lack of understanding. So we touched on training just a second ago, and lack of understanding can be a big part of why things are not getting implemented. So perhaps they don't understand what is being asked of them. If that's the case, they're probably not going to do it because they just don't understand why or what it means. Make sure that you're explaining what you need without jargon. So this is something that I do in all of my tech work, is I just use it really plainly. And yeah, sometimes you might need to include some jargon phrases in there, but then take the time to actually explain what it means. And just imagine that you're trying to explain it to a child, not in the sense that you're being condescending, but just making it so that it's something that even a child could understand, so that then everybody comes away from the meeting or from what it is that you're sharing with a much better understanding of what it is that's being discussed. Talk about the website and the business benefit. So what is it that doing this fix would actually achieve, and how would that allow them to achieve their goals, create more conversions, or all of the things that we're usually measured against. But if you talk about how doing this thing will help you achieve that, that is also a great way to help people gain a greater understanding. And support and resources, again, if we need to offer training on that, that's completely fine. We've done it before at Journey Further, and I'm sure we'll do it again. It benefits everybody. Technical debt and legacy systems. It could be that they can't fix things because they're on a really old system and they just don't have the money or the capability, or whatever the case may be at the moment, to update them. Therefore, can't actually do what is being asked. Well, yeah, that's a common one, and it's because not all website platforms are able to do that. So, just take the time to understand and look at ways that we can adapt. So maybe it's, okay, we can't do this now, but we'll do it in the future. Or, okay, we can't do this now, but what can we do instead? And these are the sort of things that we can look at and start to adapt. No communication. So, maybe there's people just never talk to the devs. They don't know that they exist, or they think they're just these scary little weirdos in the corner. They're not. They're lovely. Obviously, I'm a scary little weirdo in a corner as well. But, come and talk to me. It's fine. We all work together. And again, this is just about using the same sort of tools that I talked about. So Slack, Jira, Basecamp, all of these things, all of these different tools that we can use to set up those lines of communication. Short-term results, that's all people seem to care about these days, unfortunately. It's like, okay, what are the quick wins? How can we do this? And they ignore the larger items. Another one can be that there's lack of data-driven decision making. So businesses can be guilty of just making changes on the back of requests from higher ups and don't seem to take into consideration the things that are going to really make a difference to the bottom line. And perhaps that's just because they just don't have the data or don't know how to get that data. But we can help with that by using data that steers businesses in the right direction. We can then optimize our efforts and enable much quicker action based on the valuable insights and the data that we share. Doing this is a much stronger approach because it means that businesses and us as marketers become more adaptable, and we can all then evolve and grow a lot easier and a lot quicker. So, making our audit actionable. We can do that by having a really clear summary. So I start this at the start of my audits. I start this at the start. But yeah, the first thing that people see when they come to my audits is a summary sheet. So my audits are conducted on Google Sheets, and there's lots of tabs in it, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the first one that they see is a summary, and this shows them things like the common metrics that you might like to see. So how many URLs have we found? How many page titles do we need to work on? How many canonicals do we need to work on? So just the numbers of these, because these are, I know that things commonly ask about, or it might be things based on previous conversations that we've had with the client. So things that they're measured on, and they say, I need to know this, so that when they come into the audit, they can see those metrics nice and quick up front. So this might be what it looks like. This is a recent example. So this includes a little bit more information in a summary than I would usually provide, because I appreciate there's still quite a lot here, but this is what our particular client asked for. But what we'd also done on this one is, because we'd worked with them in the past and conducted an audit the year before, I was able to compare the two, and this is something that they really needed to see, as well as these numbers, so they can see where things have increased or decreased and what this difference was, and how many items had failed in the checklist and things like that. So it meant that they could just quickly come in and see those changes, and take that away. Highlight the high impact changes. This is something that you could really do that will allow your audits to be more impactful. So when you're presenting them, make sure that your clients and stakeholders recognize the recommendations that offer the most significant impact, but most significant impact with minimum effort. That's really important that you highlight those nice and clearly. And then you can also communicate how these will impact their conversions. This is one of the ways that I've started to do this, actually, and it's really interesting. It's a new element that I've added, especially laying it out this way. And what it's allowed us to do is see where the biggest problems are. So all of the categories that I went through earlier when I was talking about indexing, crawling, cacheability, all those sort of things, my audit is broken down in that exact same way. And as you can see from the categories here, so each item that I'm checking refers to one of these categories. And based on whether that item is a pass, partial, or a fail, it allows them to get a score, which then feeds into this overall table that's aggregated. So what I can see, and what my clients can see by looking at this, is that, yeah, site speed is the area that has the most issues. So that's one of the areas that we're certainly going to focus on up front. And we can also see that content is also another big focus area. So those will probably be two of the main areas that we focus on. But it's also really useful because when a client says, like, why are we spending so much time working on this? And then you can quickly show them this this screen that you have in your audit and be like, well, this is why I'm spending so much time working on content, because this was one of the weakest areas within the audit. But it's a much more visual way of doing it. And like I say, it's a new thing that I've started adding into my audits, but it's something that's already proving really, really valuable. Cost versus benefit. Make sure you're taking the time to highlight what the outcomes should be. So, like, okay, it's going to cost you this much in time or this much in revenue, but you can get X, Y, Z on the back of it. So again, it's that PIE, or what other metrics you want to use to be able to communicate that across. And also highlight the changes that are likely to have the highest return on investment. So you can talk about the ones that are going to be maximum results for minimum effort, but what's actually, what's that going to be in terms of return on investment as well. And develop a phased roadmap for implementation. This has been really, really powerful. I'm going to go through some of these a little bit quicker because I know that we are a little bit short on time, but do let me know if you've got questions about this and we can chat afterwards if needs be. But when you're creating a roadmap, make sure that you've got a step-by-step plan for addressing these recommendations, address the high impact items as well, customize them. Each audit should be bespoke and tailor the recommendations specifically for each client. You don't need to pick something that worked for your last client and stick it in this one. That's not going to get you anywhere at all. You need to make sure that each of your points are relevant and align very closely with the overall objectives for your specific client. This might be one of the ways it looks, creating audits that stakeholders want to action. So we can see this is another example here of how we've included information around the PIE, and then we've got like the traffic uplift and predicted conversions in the charts at the end there. There's no one way it should look. As I said earlier, you need to find out who you're going to be presenting the audit to and what information they need to know. What do they care about? What do they need to be able to do their job? Because that ultimately is going to help you to do your job. So work with them. And showcase value and importance. So using a PIE can help you in the hearts and minds, and that's why we do it. It's something that we spend quite a bit of time on at Journey Further. And like I say, here's just another example of how that might look. So we have issues 1, 2, and 3 across there, and then we have the final scores at the end based on the potential importance and ease, and then that gives us the final score. So issue number 3, that has a higher score of those 3 issues, so that would be probably one of the ones that I would work on first. There we go. We can see that helps determine priority order. Being collaborative in terms of implementing these. So if you're not collaborating, nothing is going to get done. Make project management your friend. Everything should be documented within a tool that allows you to see where things are being worked on, how far along they are, and all of that fun stuff. It's a really important layer of transparency, and it just adds that accountability. That's a really important thing that's often missing from these audits. And I use these spreadsheets, right? So I also add all of this into my spreadsheets. I have like a status tab, and we can see where they're all up to. And my audits become a living document, so people are not having to jump between all of these different tools. They've got it all within that one link that we're using all the time within the calls that we have. Set up regular huddles, have stand-up meetings, making sure that everybody who's involved is there, and just make sure that everybody is able to attend these and share the updates of where they're up to or what help they might need. And then getting towards the end, we have now need to find ways that we can monitor and measure the results from our audits. So we've gone through all of that. We've done our audits, we've presented them, and we've got that buy-in that we needed from our stakeholders. They know the difference that it's going to make. Great, job done, right? We can sit back. Not quite. You need to see what impact it's having, and then you can use that to your advantage. If you want to pay rise, go, hey boss, this is what I've achieved for my clients. I've generated this. Or you can also, share that with your clients and help them to do the same thing. Or there's a lot of reasons why we need to be tracking the results. Of course, that was just a few of them, but there's 3 ways that we can do that. And that's establishing clear KPIs. We can do that at the start of the audit. So what are things that we need to be achieving by the end of this? Make sure that you're agreed on them with everybody involved, and that's what you're working towards. So reporting dashboards, these can be things that you look at every month. As SEOs, we tend to have regular monthly reports anyway, but you can have a section within that allows you to keep track of the KPIs that you've agreed upon. And also remember to review and adjust as needed, especially when you have a Google algorithm update or there's a migration that's suddenly been decided, and obviously that's going to affect your tech roadmap. So just know that you need to be adaptable, as we touched on, and adjust as you go. And all of this, tying it together with everything that we've learned as well, are how we can maximize results from our tech SEO audits. And there we go. That should help us to do everything that we set out at the start. We can get these positive results from our tech SEO, and mean that we can repeat them for our clients, and we can all grow together. That's me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nikki. It was awesome, especially the part about communication. It resonates me a lot. It's not only about SEO, but also about marketing, where I'm working actually. And any other teams should always communicate from time to time. I agree with you on 100%.
I know.
Well,
it always
guys,
feels so funny. I'm always saying about people need to communicate, but it feels like such a simple point, but it's something that's overlooked a lot, and it can make a huge difference. So I'm glad you agree.
Absolutely. Guys, I see 8 people are watching us already, so I'd like to address a few words about us. We offer, as Serpstat, we offer comprehensive tools to help you identify keywords and backlinks opportunities, understanding your competitors, search strategies, monitor your daily ranking, identify SEO issues, manage your team efficiently, and seamlessly share custom reports. You can take your first step towards effective search visibility with Serpstat Academy if you're just starting your SEO journey. So I'd like to add one more tool to Nikki's list, of which can be useful for you during your daily working routine. You can try Serpstat with a 7-day free trial. And you can always contact us if you have any questions. And regarding questions to Nikki, we have 3 of them. If you have something more to ask, please, it's your shining time. And I looked through these questions we have. I guess you briefly mentioned the answers to them, but maybe we can just look through and you can show where to find the answers on your slides, or maybe to remind us about your personal opinion about this question.
Yeah.
And here's the first one. How do you prioritize technical SEO recommendations when faced with limited resources or budget constraints? And what criteria do you use to determine which issue should be addressed first?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, that ties back to the PIE that we talked about. So the potential, importance, and ease, and that way we can see, what are the ones that are gonna give us the most quickly, and those are the ones that we focus on. So it's basically saying if we don't fix anything else, these are the ones that we need to focus on now. So with what resources we have, let's look at those, and then perhaps on the back of that, you might get more budget on the back of it because you can show your success. But that's what I always start with, using that PIE metric.
The next question is, the importance of mobile first indexing is growing. So what are some best practices for optimizing sites for mobile search and how they differ from desktop search?
Yeah, another one.
I guess you already covered it.
Sharing that. Yeah, it's another one that we touched on. So it's things like making sure that your buttons are the right size and easy to click, especially when we're on the go. It's things like having the responsive websites, also the colors, the way that things change and move on the page. There's a lot of things that go into mobile, but it's also important, I think, that when you're having a site design, it used to be that you'd have a separate design for mobile and desktop, and they should be the same now. You don't need to have a completely separate design, but you do need to consider how the site looks on mobile in that process. So it'll be a slightly different version, but it is the same design. So it's just showing how the element should look and behave on the website. And if you can get that set out early on in the process while you're going through a site design, then it'll make it much easier further down the line as well. When the site does go live and you've got real people interacting with your site, you'll have less to worry about.
Great. And the last question for now: what role does site speed optimization play in tech SEO, and how can I improve website speed without compromising other aspects of the user experience?
Yeah, so it can be a balancing act depending on what areas that you're working on. So the common one for me is images, and it's often one of the first areas that I work on when I'm coming to site speed, because it's often the one that people understand most. So yeah, the argument that I always get with that is, well, I can't make my images any smaller because my products need to look their best. And it's like, yeah, they do. Yeah, I understand you need to have really high quality images to show off how great your products are. But you don't need a 20 megabyte image to do that. We can certainly scale that down, and it doesn't need to be 4,000 pixels live to be able to do that wide, because what mobile device is that big? None. So let's optimize it, reduce the weight. We can shave off things like what's known as EXIF data. So that's things that often gets added to images, like the camera it was taken on, the location it was taken at. All of this extra metadata, it actually does add additional weight to our images. So we can strip all that off really easily using lots of tools online. And that will take the weight down of those images, as well as resizing them and everything else. But you can also test it on a production site and show them that by you reducing these images, it's not affecting user experience. Often they won't be able to tell the difference, but you'll be able to feel the difference in terms of the speed, but you won't be able to tell that the images are a lot different. But yeah, just testing it and showing them is a good way, and proving the value of the work that you're doing and how it actually won't impact user experience in the way that they perhaps think it will.
Great. And that's it. That's all questions we have. Thank you a lot for presenting this huge and really informative topic. Guys, if you have any questions, maybe to Nikki, please follow her on LinkedIn and other social media. You can find the links to them on the slides we'll send you tomorrow. Make sure you're registered. Also, if you maybe need support of any agency, look through the agency with which Nikki works with. It seems like she has a huge experience. I hope you'll match the energy with her as I did. And in a few days, we'll announce our next webinar called Guide to Enterprise SEO. So follow us as well on social media, and see you soon.
Great. Thanks, everyone.